Hey, Reluctant Preppers, we're going to talk about a subject we've never addressed directly before on our channel, and that is the controversial topic of numismatic, collectible, or rare gold coins. Little did I know as I ventured into the conversations about owning physical gold that discussing options for buying collectible, rare, and numismatic coins would draw such heated controversy from multiple corners, such as, will buying pre-1933 gold coins protect me from government confiscation? If premiums tend to be higher on collectible coins, is there a cycle to the premium? And what will happen to their value in a crisis if gold rises sharply? Or do numismatic coins have a place in preserving my family's nest egg, or is that a good way to risk too much of my family's nest egg? Many of the topics that we've addressed with our guests is to help us all be aware and prepared have encountered strongly polarized positions and worldviews like cryptos versus precious metals, and vault storage versus home storage, and online purchasing versus cash in hand, private and local, etc. But the extreme views of people I've encountered who are earnestly devoted to or repelled by numismatic coins has convinced me that we've got to look into this more closely, bring this controversy out of the trenches and into the light of open civil debate to discern the facts and data and help us all be better informed. So whether each of us may hold deep-seated views or a casual opinion or haven't even heard of or thought about the virtues of risks of acquiring, quote, collectible coins, I hope we'll all learn from this discussion and come away better prepared to protect our family's well-being. Today's guest, Franklin Sanders, known as the Money Changer and founder of the-moneychanger.com, has been in the gold and silver business for over 40 years. Sanders is visiting Reluctant Preppers this first time to explain his experienced view of the factors affecting premiums on collectible gold coins and why he says the data argues against buying numismatic coins as part of your wealth preservation strategy. Stay tuned for other guests and even panel debates on opposing sides of this topic as we go forward.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Reluctant Preppers provides educational awareness and commentary only. Opinions expressed do not constitute personalized financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and seek qualified personal financial consultation before making investment decisions. Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're delighted to have this first-time guest. Franklin Sanders has been in the gold and silver business since 1980. First a bullion dealer, physical gold and silver, also the publisher of a newsletter, and also the founder of the-moneychanger.com, where he gives expert commentary on the gold and silver markets. He's also participating with his son on volunteer precious metals. So, Franklin, thank you for joining us this first time here on Reluctant Preppers.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
We wanted to bring you on to take a first close look at a topic that has been of continued interest to our viewers. They keep asking us about the role that rare coins, also called numismatic coins, should or shouldn't play in people's strategies for wealth preservation. It's a topic that we want to continue to at least be aware of so that people can be better informed and better prepared so that they make good decisions and ones where they are fully aware of the implications, and as they try to protect their family's finances, whether this is something that's right for them. We're looking forward to being able to have some debate panels on this in the future so that we really shine a bright light on this subject and open it up so people can be more aware. So could you share with us your perspective gained over almost 40 years in the physical precious metals business about what's different about rare coins as opposed to bullion coins and how people should be aware of that?
Right. Well, there's an axiom that I've observed over the years, and that is over time, premium always disappears. What I mean by that is premium is that amount that you pay above the gold or silver value of an item. For instance, if gold is $1,500 an ounce, then 1 ounce of American Eagle ought to cost $1,500. That's its melt value. Whatever you pay above that is premium. And numismatic coins have had huge enormous premiums in the past. And the trend since 1980 has been for those premiums to disappear. And that trend has accelerated since 1996, 97, and then again moving into the 2000s from about 2005 forward. And then the last 3 years have seen premiums on a lot of those numismatic items disappear altogether. It's rough.
Now, people are familiar, I mean, anyone who's accumulated even bullion coins is aware that depending on the form of the bullion you purchase, there are different premiums customary. Like if you ask for a American gold eagle, there's a certain premium you'll typically pay versus, say, a Canadian maple leaf, or even a no-name round if you buy like silver rounds and that sort of thing. So these premiums that different forms, typically even bullion, employ, do you also say that disappears over time, or are those premiums over on bullion forms fairly constant over time?
All premiums disappear over time. We've seen it in the last 3 years in bullion type items. There has been a time this year when American Eagles, which traded, let's say at wholesale at 3.5 or 4.5% over their melt value, that's at wholesale, they have gone down to par with Krugerrands, no premium at all, or 0.3%, something like that. So there is very, very almost no difference in them, where there used to be for years and years there was a $30 or $40 difference between the lowest priced bullion coins like Austrian 100 coronas, Mexican 50 pesos. Krugerrands are kind of in the middle, and then up at the top are American Eagles. So the way I'm plugged in is that at the end of a bull market, you just want to end up with the most ounces possible, because that premium is disappearing over time, and you won't get the premium back when you sell. So I'd rather buy the lowest premium item I could buy, and that's proven over the last 40 years and increasingly over the last really 10 years to be the best strategy to follow, because you're not losing premium when you go back to sell. See, there's a kind of a 0 point for all bullion items. Bullion items are never going to be bought at much less than 1% under melt. And the reason for that is if they get too cheap, then arbitrageurs will go in and buy the coins and melt them, because they can make 1% doing that. So they're never going to go much under that. But everything that's over 100%, everything's over the melt value, is subject to disappear. And those premiums really, at peaks in markets, they might strengthen, but most likely they'll erode at the very peak in the market.
So that's one thing we should probably talk is, are there different phases of a bull versus a bear, stagnant market versus finally when it breaks out, when you have this final blow off top or whatever? Are there phases of that where you see exaggerations up or down in premiums, for example, on things that are considered worthy of carrying premiums?
Well, in the past, we've seen premiums start to gain. These are minute changes, that probably nobody but a dealer would be interested in. But we see premiums start to gain as they go higher. As the metal rallies, we see premiums on some things gain, because sometimes shortages will show up in the market. But as a general thing, the general trend is over time, premium always disappears. And that's why you got to avoid premium if you can. Or another thing you could do is, when you're holding something that develops a huge premium, swap that for something that has no premium. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Since December of 2012, US 90% silver coins have 2 times gone from 0 premium to $5 an ounce over spot. Well, that's an enormous premium. And what we were able to do was to take those 90% coins, swap them for bars, 100-ounce bars or 1-ounce rounds, and realize up to, in some cases over 20% gains in ounces. no extra money put in, just in ounces. So that's one of the reasons it's important to watch premiums, because sometimes you have a chance to swap out and actually make a gain if something gains a premium. I've gotten off the subject. Let me go back to numismatics. What we've seen with numismatic coins is that the premiums have declined steadily since 1980 and increasingly since right before the 2000s began. If you look at my first chart, that's a chart of an MS62 St. Gaudens $20 gold piece.
Can you stop right there and explain to people what does MS62 means?
Okay, MS62 means mint state 62. That means that the coin is uncirculated. Anything from MS60 or higher means the coin is technically uncirculated. And there are a number of grades. There's MS60, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, and 67. That's the end of it. That's just the way the scale works. So if you're going to buy these coins, it's best to buy what they call slab coins, which are certified coins. It just means that when you go to sell them back, nobody's going to argue with you about the grade. That used to be another very big problem about numismatic coins, is that a lot of dealers sold overgraded coins. But since the slabbing came in the late 80s, that's not the same kind of problem anymore. So back to chart one. Let me explain one other thing too before I go on. When we talk about numismatic coins, most dealers out there will mean, when they say that coins that have been sold for the last 40, 50 years as gold investments, but were actually $20 gold pieces or $10 gold pieces or even $5 gold pieces. The 20s, what I'd like to make plain is that 20s are not rare. Except for a very few dates and mints, $20 gold pieces are abundant. So are $10 gold pieces. So there isn't really a rarity factor in these. A rare coin is something like a 1921 dime that there are very, very few examples of. That's a rare coin. That whole class of investments moves to a different drummer than bullion-related numismatic coins like $20 gold pieces or tens. I mean, when we're talking about numismatic coins, in this case, we're not really talking about terribly rare coins. Terribly rare coins are a different thing. So that makes sense?
So yeah, as I'm learning from almost knowing nothing about this, I'm realizing that there's going to be a lot more sort of arenas of discussion we'll need to have in the future. So that helps me to understand that. So yeah, so I'm following. So this discussion that we're in at the moment is talking about fairly common coins like the $20 gold pieces. That's what you're describing.
Right.
Okay.
But they've been called numismatic or semi-numismatic coins, and they were offered by many dealers as an investment in bullion. But I'm going to show you why they weren't an investment in bullion when I show you these charts.
Okay.
The first chart is the MS62 St. Gaudens, which is a very common, very popular, uncirculated gold coin, semi-numismatic or numismatic. And it shows that versus gold from 1996 to 2019. And if you look at the chart, the red line with the scale on the left is the premium on the St. Gaudens, and the black line is the gold price. So what you see is that from a peak at nearly 205% of the gold value, that premium on the St. Gaudens has dropped all the way to about 6% today. It's an enormous drop. It's down 48.2%. And at the same time, gold has risen. Now, I'd like to explain one thing to you about this chart, because it's going to show up on other charts. You see where it says 2008 financial panic spike in the middle of the chart.
Yep.
What happened in that panic was this. The gold and silver markets are very, very small markets. Most people don't realize there's just not a lot of the stuff around. So when the stock market began to crash, terrified investors wanted to run into gold and silver, and there just wasn't enough stock to satisfy those people. So the premiums went up on everything, including $20 gold pieces. You see that spike? That spike lasted about 1 year. It started in September of 2008 and was basically over by September of 2009. So that's the only time that premium has increased. And notice that if you had bought those $20 gold pieces during that time, you would have done much worse than if you bought gold, because that premium has continued to decline over time. This chart number 2 shows the year-over-year rate of change for the same coin. And what you know about rate of change is that as long as it's under 100%, then the investment is on track to underperform gold. So the St. Gaudens is on track to underperform gold. And you'll notice that it's still under 100%, and it's spent the majority of the time since 1997 underperforming gold. This third chart I've got, let me just give you a word about my data. Those first 2 charts are data that I kept personally over the years. The rest of these charts will come from Coin Dealer Newsletter, which is the standard pricing publication in the numismatic industry. So all of these next charts that you're going to see are data drawn from Coin Dealer Newsletter. This third chart shows the gold on versus the premium on the 20 Liberty type. There are 2 types of $20 gold pieces: the Liberty type, which was made before 1908, and then the St. Gaudens type, which is the standing Liberty type made after 1908. So what you can see is if you take all of those coins together, everything from the circulated grades through MS65, and you average all those, the premium has dropped 53.4%. It's dropped from 235% to 109%. And gold in the meantime has risen. So if you had bought the $20 gold pieces, there were some cases in which, even though gold had risen way above the price it had at the time you bought, and you bought $20 gold pieces, you actually lost money. As strange as that sounds, the reason you lost money was because that premium was evaporating. Chart 4 shows the premium on the $20 St. Gaudens type, and you can see that it's been the same story. It's gone down from 148% to 102%. In other words, the premium has lost 31% of the premium has been lost. Chart 5 shows the MS65. Now, one of the interesting things is that the higher grade coins, and MS65 is a high grade coin, the higher grade coins have lost more premium than the lower grade coins. So they've actually done worse.
Quick question, just so I'm sure I'm tracking you on this. Since we're expressing the premium as a percent of the value of the underlying metal, it would stand naturally, just by the way math works, inversely, that as the metal price goes up, even if you had, like, say on US Silver Eagles or something where you're paying a couple dollars over spot or something, the premium would effectively be less of a larger base price as the base price goes up. So you would naturally expect there to be some, if you're expressing it as a percent of a growing number, even a fixed premium would be a smaller percentage of that number. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that, but if that's the percentage basis on which you invested in, and it limited how many ounces you could obtain in the first place, that even if the base metal has gone up, if your premium was so significant and if it's gone down so much in relative terms to the base price, you can still get fewer ounces out than you would have if you had bought into the base metal in the first place. So you had pointed out that a fixed premium, such as on Eagles, will in fact be less percentage-wise as the cost of the underlying coin goes up. But you pointed out that these extreme drops that we've seen in premiums on some of these the $20 gold pieces, for example, it just gets ground down by a rising market, and that even the dollar value of those doesn't keep up with the increase that you would have had if you had just been owning the basic gold itself.
Right. So that's the reason I've advised people for years to keep out of these coins. And why we've liquidated people who've come to me with those collections, we've liquidated them to try and capture that whatever premium was left and turn it into gold. We can't do that now because the premiums have dropped so low on these $20 gold pieces and $10 gold pieces. There's no premium left to capture. If somebody has got a bunch of these, the best thing they can do is just hold on them and wait it out. You know.
And it begs the question, I guess, from a contrarian standpoint, that if somebody is now trying to start getting into accumulating gold, is it realistic for them to consider that, well, the premiums have been ground down to close to melt value now, so this might be a viable option if they are considering, or is that something you think under no circumstances should you consider paying, above, well, I guess even gold ingots and maple leafs and so on have some premium attached to them?
Well, they do, but that you have to compare the 3.5% commission premium that you're going to pay on those to how much you'd have to pay for the numismatic coins. If you buy the circulated $20 Saints or Liberties or the $10 gold pieces, you can buy in the lower grades. You can buy them as cheaply as or cheaper than you can buy American Eagles. I mean, I've actually sold them that, and I think that's a great coin to buy because after all, it's just a piece of gold. But when somebody sees it and it's 100 years old and it's an old American coin, their eyes light up and their fingers get itchy and they just fall in love with it. And so that's the reason I'd buy them. But if I've got to pay, instead of paying 3.5% over the gold price, if I've got to pay 10, 12, 15%, I'm going to start balking at that because I don't have that much confidence that premium will come back.
Be preserved. Okay, what about the exception that you described earlier where there was a rush like around the '08 year when suddenly a lot of people became interested in gold? If people become interested in gold again, isn't there a proper expectation that premium will spike again?
Dunnigan, you're talking about a once in 100-year crisis. I mean, it would take, I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but it would take a tremendous crisis to bring out those premiums again. And remember, we've gone through a period, this correction from 2011 till 2019 has brought a tremendous liquidation of retail holdings of gold and silver. That is, people have sold. And we've seen it now in the last 6 months, especially the last year, as prices have risen, all of these old bulls are tiring out and they're selling into the market. So there's more of that to come as the price rises. So what I'm saying to you is presently dealers are glutted with not only with bullion type coins, but with these $20 and $10 gold pieces. I mean, I've had dealers, wholesalers beg me here, I'll sell you these things that melt if you'll move a bunch of them for me. So there's a huge amount of inventory out there right now just because of what I just described, the liquidation that's taken place in about the last 3 years. So I don't expect that premium to come back anytime soon, but it would take some kind of crisis like 2008 to make that happen.
What about truly rare coins, like ones that have significant historical value, that kind of thing? Those would. You mentioned earlier that that's a completely different category than these that you were describing on these charts. Do you see value that people should be considering those either?
Not unless they have a whole lot of money, because those items are too complicated to deal with. They require a tremendous amount of knowledge. They require a professional dealer. A lot of them are dealt with at auction. They don't even, they don't trade hands right from hand to hand. A lot of them do, but many of them require an auction. So if I expect chaos in the markets in the future, I don't want to buy something that requires great stability and levelness in markets, and that's what numismatic coins are. So it just doesn't fit into my outlook for the future.
What about people's claims, and this is another thing we've heard from people who are in favor of getting older, like pre-1933 coins is that they be less subject to government confiscation if that ever resurfaces. You've looked into that and you wrote about it a little bit in your article. What's your opinion on that?
That's complete hogwash. That's total and complete hogwash. And I'll explain to you why. There was a regulation there was a gold confiscation in 1933, and there was an exception made for coins of unusual values to collectors, I think is the way the words went. And that confiscation was written, and the prohibition on gold ownership was written into the Gold Reserve Act of 1935. There was the regulation that was written that defined, based on that part of the Gold Reserve Act, that defined a numismatic coin as anything with a premium of more than 15% or more. That regulation died at the end of 1974 when those provisions of the Gold Reserve Act were repealed. And so that none of that is true. If the government's going to confiscate gold, they're going to confiscate all gold. There's no reason that they would not confiscate gold minted before 1933 or 35 or whatever it is. So there's the basis in law for that doesn't exist anymore. The only things defined in the law today as numismatic coins are defined not by regulation, but by statute. And those are coins like the bullion coins, the American gold eagles, the silver eagles, and certain other commemorative coins that the mint sells. So there's no basis in fact that those coins are any safer to hold than anything else. Another false claim that I hear is, you don't have to report those when you sell them. You don't have to report them. If you have a capital gain on them and you don't report them, you're perjuring yourself on that 1040 form. You have to report the gain on anything that you have, numismatic or bullion or whatever it is. And it's your job to report it. It's not the dealer's job to report it. So those are just false claims. And purchases of bullion coins, no purchase of gold or silver is reportable, none. So a lot of times numismatic dealers will scare people into buying their coins because they say that, these coins are not reportable when you buy them. These coins are not reportable when you sell them. Well, most bullion coins aren't either. And besides, that's not really, that's a hypothetical question about a situation you haven't faced yet, and you may not ever have to face. I personally don't think the government will try to confiscate gold again.
Back on the question of reportability, since the Patriot Act, so-called Patriot Act, about transactions in $10,000 or more, and depending on the form of the funds, that kind of thing, there are types of transactions that are reportable, though. Well, is that not the case?
You're asking a question that I often hear and something that causes a lot of confusion. What is reportable is a cash transaction, a transaction where more than $10,000 in green paper money or certain other instruments changes hands. If you pay for $50,000 worth of gold in a check or a bank wire, that's not reportable because that's not cash. It's only cash that applies to.
You mentioned if people are preparing for what could be a chaotic market or a chaotic situation, I got the gist from what you were saying that you think the most value in that situation you would anticipate being by things that are highly recognized by the most people, the most well-recognized. What, in your opinion, do you consider to be the most well-recognized forms of precious metals?
Well, any of the common bullion coins, American Eagles, Krugerrands, Canadian maple leaves, any of those common, French 20 francs, British sovereigns, all of those are good, Austrian 100 coronas. One of the things that I'd think about is I'd get some small gold first, and I'd certainly get some 90% silver coin because that's the smallest. If you have 90% silver dimes, they are the smallest piece of silver minted, the smallest thing you can get. And so I would get some of that, but I'd make sure I stayed with the common gold coins, not anything really exotic. You don't want to get Colombian 5 pesos or something like that. People look at them and say, I've never seen that before. I don't know anything about that.
So the Kool-Aid mint round celebrating something that nobody's ever heard of. Okay. But in this current market where we sit right now, with gold just having broken out of a 6-year-long trading trough, and some people hoping that it might show signs of life going forward, some people concerned that at least they want to have it as an insurance against further devaluation of the U.S. dollar, that kind of thing. Your primary perspective, as I'm hearing you, is what you trust most is just get the most ounces of well-recognized precious metals that you can, and that means don't pay significant premiums over melt value when you acquire your ounces of precious metals.
Oh, absolutely. Just buy the lowest cost per ounce you can buy. Lowest cost you can buy.
As long as it's well recognized.
As long as it's well recognized. Yeah. Well, liquidity always factors into that. You don't want to buy something that's illiquid. I mean, I could sell you gold shot. You know what that is? That's 4 9s fine little BBs of gold, but you wouldn't be able to sell them anywhere. And I could sell them to you real cheaply, but you don't want that. So that, liquidity is always a consideration. But there are a lot of things that you may not have heard of, like, for instance, French 20 francs. It's a very, very common gold coin. British sovereigns, very common gold coin. And they're way cheaper than American Eagle 10th ounce or quarter ounce coins.
Interesting. Well, Franklin, we'd love to have you back on again, especially if we can line up a debate panel, because that way we can also get questions from our viewers to try to field in that format as well. We've been speaking with Franklin Sanders in the gold and silver business since 1980, well-recognized expert in the field. You can find him at the-moneychanger.com. And Franklin, thank you for joining us this first time on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you.
Hey, Reluctant Preppers, if you want to hear more of bonus footage from other guests we've had on, come on over right now to patreon.com/reluctantpreppers and access that bonus footage there. Take care. With surprising new concerns expressed about Dunnigan's changing hairstyle, one viewer even commented that hair is dyed, fried, and laid to the side. But what you're not being told is Dunnigan's hair needs no dye thanks to the wonderful vitamin and mineral regimen that Melody recommends, and is not laid to the side to cover any bald spot either, since Dunnigan's full head of hair is exceptionally well attached. However, Dunnigan does use hair products only as a disaster prevention because he's at severe risk of catastrophic emergency situations. But although there may be some changes you don't like to hair, this is one kind of change you'll definitely want to have on hand if the situation gets hairy. Pure silver. And for a limited time, your first ounce of silver can be purchased at spot price with free shipping on orders over $99 by going to sdbullion.com/rp. And you'll be supporting Reluctant Preppers as well. It's within your grasp to get your hands on the perfect change for hairy situations at sdbullion.com/rp. P.S. Dunnigan was not harmed in the making of this video.